far as Signalgate goes, all fingers seem to be pointing mostly toward one man, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz.
Here's Trump speaking on Waltz during an executive order signing on Wednesday.
Well, yeah, Mike Waltz, I guess he said he claimed responsibility, I would imagine. Had nothing to do with anyone else. It was Mike, I guess. I don't know. I was told it was Mike. But again, the attacks were unbelievably successful, and that's ultimately what you should be talking about, I think. No, Mike he took responsibility for it.
When it comes to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Trump had a slightly different tone.
Hegseth is doing a great job. He had nothing to do with this. Hegseth. How do you bring Hegseth into it? He had nothing to do. Look, it's all a witch hunt.
Waltz apparently was the one who accidentally included editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, in a White House signal text chain. That chain contained deliberations and plans on an imminent attack on the Houthis. The attack was carried out earlier this month, and the White House called it successful.
Some on the right are calling on the president to fire Waltz in order to mitigate the fallout. Co-host of Breaking Points and former Rising host Sagar and Jetty wrote on X, "Can anyone seriously argue that Mike Waltz should not be fired? Both responsible for a massive security leak and accidentally revealing he's in regular comms with one of the most prolific neocon journalists in D.C. The chat also shows how JD's restraint was ignored by him."
Dave Portnoy, the founder of Barstool Sports and a Trump supporter, shared a video on X. Let's watch.
Trump, I get being loyal to your people. I don't like firing people on innocent mistakes that they make. But this, and I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, you're mad about this, but we had a president like Biden with dementia who had the nuclear codes. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. That wasn't right then, and this isn't right now. In this new administration, you want to take accountability. Trump, you may love Michael Waltz. You love Pete Hegseth. You may love these guys. Somebody has to go down.
Broadcaster Piers Morgan and Trump-aligned podcaster Dave Rubin had this to say.
For the first time in his second presidency, it's time for the president to wield his formidable index finger and use the words that made him world famous. You're fired.
If I was the president right now and I had this knew that this group existed, would I probably fire the guy who created this firestorm? The answer is yes, but Trump has to make that estimation.
German news outlet Der Spiegel is reporting that senior White House officials had some of their personal sensitive data online. This includes passwords, cell phone numbers, and email addresses. Some of these officials' data include that of Waltz, National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
The outlet says they were able to access this data by commercial search engines and databases of hacked customer data. Per the outlet, reporters uncovered Dropbox and Signal accounts by using that publicly available data.
The German outlet writes, hostile intelligence services could use this publicly available data to hack the communications of those affected by installing spyware on their devices. In addition to Waltz, Democrats are calling for Hegseth to be fired too. Congressman Maxwell Frost and Hakeem Jeffries have both called for Hegseth to be fired. And Senators Ruben Gallego and Michael Bennet are calling for Hegseth to resign.
Political strategist and commentator Joey Manarino wrote on X, Lloyd Austin disappeared for a week and no one was told, no one got fired. 13 troops were killed in Afghanistan because Biden and his team couldn't put together a competent war plan. No one was fired. But Pete Hegseth is supposed to be fired because Mike Waltz accidentally added someone to a Signal chat. Yeah, okay. Here's where I come down on this, Lynda, and we've been talking about this all week. If I was absolutely convinced that it was totally an innocent mistake, I'm not sure I would be calling for Mike Waltz to be fired. However, I am not at all convinced it was it was an innocent mistake, to be clear, but I think it was one born of the fact that he has been in communication with Jeffrey Goldberg. So I think more MAGA people should be suspicious of that and wonder whether he was leaking information to a notoriously anti-Trump, neoconservative figure more in line with a Bush-Cheney version of the party in order to embarrass or discredit Trump, or maybe more likely J.D. Vance, who was actually in the chat cautioning that maybe it is not a good idea to have this war against the Houthis in Yemen. So that is my concern. Even from a pro-MAGA perspective, I don't know why you wouldn't be asking Mike Waltz more serious questions about why do you have Jeffrey Goldberg on speed dial? Why is that the case? Right? Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. But where I disagree with you is I definitely do not think this was an innocent mistake. A mistake it was. But every single senior administration official, SAO, this is what we called them, right, that was on that Signal chat is absolutely culpable. They were reckless. They read those chats. They knew that they were on a system that was unsecured, unclassified, and that it was set to have disappearing messages. So on multiple levels, they are violating federal law, the Espionage Act, the Federal Records Act, and they all knew this. You are onboarded and trained within hours of being appointed to what your requirements are in terms of security, and that is at all levels of security clearance.
I saw this said on social media yesterday. I guess I'm not 100% sure that's true, but it was I think it was a Tulsi Gabbard spokesperson saying this, that Signal comes preloaded on the government devices now, and so that there's some expectation that they would use that. Do you know anything about that? Or
well, if that is true, that was certainly not true during the Biden administration, which would beg a whole lot of other questions. I mean, keep in mind, these are not just any administration officials. They are the absolute most senior. What does that mean? That means that they have SCIFs built into their homes. They have the secure communications facilities. They have staff that are with them at all times who have especially secure phones that they can use. So it is incredibly convenient for them to have these same discussions that they were having, which, by the way, legitimate for them to have this back and forth.
Right. I think we all agreed that the conversation that took place was a reasonable conversation,
right.
And I was happy to see doubts being raised and different perspectives being raised about whether this was a good idea. I happen to align more with J.D. Vance on foreign policy, this particular policy. So it was good to see that there is dissent. People feel free to disagree and talk it through. I think that's a good and healthy tendency. But I don't disagree with you that it obviously needs to take place under secure conditions, and Signal is perhaps not the best way to do that. Now, however, it's not the case that the chats were hacked in any way. It's that they invited someone into the conversation who should not have been there.
Right, and that's the crux of the problem.
Right.
No one should ever have seen those inner deliberations or that discussion, as comforting as it may be to you, Robby. I mean, it's just the latest sign of the recklessness and carelessness of this administration. And honestly, it's most damning for Pete Hegseth, who, as you know, barely made it through the confirmation process. That clip that we just saw of President Trump shows that there's some chipping away in general of the support and the full-throated defense of this that we saw earlier this week. So we're going to see how this thing plays out, but I don't think it's a good situation, especially with people like Senator Wicker saying, I need answers.
Yeah, I don't think the excuses offered up by the various Trump officials that, this was not, it was attack plans rather than war plans. That's an entirely semantic talking point that makes no sense. Or that it was not classified. But then Jeffrey Goldberg said, so I can publish it, right? And they said, no, we'd rather you not do that, but it's not classified. Also, the excuse that it's not classified, they classify everything.
Sure.
There's routine overclassification of all information. That actually bothers me as a transparency-obsessed libertarian person. I wish more information was declassified so we could, make sense of it ourselves. But the idea that was not classified, it's just they would classify their laundry list, their grocery list, their whatever it is. So it's not, there's no way they actually took the view that it was, anybody can have that, it's fine. And if anybody had it, what if Jeffrey Goldberg had written that article before the attacks? They could have plausibly been warned, the Houthis. So.
Exactly, and actually leaving Jeffrey Goldberg out of it. Yeah. The fact that this exchange was happening, this is where we keep emphasizing these unclassed systems, these unsecure systems, is that anyone could have hacked into this, in theory, adversaries. And what that means is that you put those men and women who were carrying out this mission at risk. This was 2 hours before they were in enemy territory, carrying out a very, very dangerous mission.
Yeah, it's not good. All right, up next, a former NPR editor argues that the outlet should just reject federal funds altogether. Stay with us.